Working session 18, human dimension activities with special emphasis on project work. My name is Luc Lietaer. I'm the project coordinator at ODIHR. This is the last working session, as you know, and a short one, but I'm confident that we can offer you much more than just a support act to the closing session. So project work is one of the tools in the OSCE toolkit, and a very important one, as demonstrated by the numerous staff implementing projects on a daily basis across all structures of our organization. And as underlined in previous working sessions at HDIM, projects fulfill multiple roles in the OSCE. They do not only try to reach their intended goals of building capacity, raising awareness, creating tools and mechanisms, they also build confidence, help prevent conflicts, and keep us engaged with our many counterparts, therefore also contributing to broader political goals. Despite the often relatively modest size of our projects, their management is not to be taken lightly. It is a science. And our organization has proven in recent years that it can deliver following high project management standards and practices. But more can and needs to be done. I am pleased to welcome today as our introducer Ms. Serani Ziegel, a senior evaluator in the Office of Internal Oversight of the Secretariat in Vienna. Now I'm welcoming her in an original way because unfortunately her flight was delayed from Vienna this morning and she could not make it in person. But I'm very grateful to all the technical staff and ODIHR staff who has made it possible for her to be with us online and on a video link. And we hope that works out. Please bear with us if there might be a hitch, but I hope it will work out fine.
Hi, can you hear?
I guess that was Serani. Hello, good morning. I'll just continue maybe giving a bit of an overview of the session further. So her introduction on evaluation, which is that sometimes unnecessarily and justly feared aspect of project management, will be followed by contributions from the High Commissioner on National Minorities and 3 of the OSCE field operations. And the presentations will focus on specific project work in the human dimension and the added value comparative advantage of OSCE engagement. After that, of course, the floor will be opened to all. We have so far 3 speakers registered, so please, the speakers list is still open behind me at the head table, and also for the closing session, if somebody still wants to sign up for that. Please also be aware we'll have a technical break after this session of about 10 minutes to prepare for the closing ceremony. So it's hereby my pleasure to introduce Serani, who we have on the screen as our introducer today. Ms. Ziegel has 14 years of experience in conducting, designing, and leading evaluations. She joined the OSCE as a senior evaluator 6 years ago, leading or contributing to some 20 evaluations and supporting the development of the evaluation function in the Office of Internal Oversight. Her specialties include thematic, country and project level evaluations, organizational development, outcome mapping, results-oriented monitoring systems, as well as theory of change and contribution analysis. Her thematic expertise covers capacity building, democratization, gender, human rights, and civil society. Before joining the OSCE, Ms. Ziegel worked with the European Commission's Europe 8 Evaluation Unit, the Council of Europe, as well as several NGOs to develop and implement evaluations across a number of sectors and topics. Ms. Ziegel also supported Europe 8 in the coordination and methodological development of the results-oriented monitoring system of the EC's external assistance projects and programs. Before working as an evaluation consultant, Ms. Ziegel worked for the OSCE missions in Kosovo and Montenegro. And with that, I'll pass the floor to Serani and hope this works out well. Serani, can you hear us? Are you ready?
Yes, very faintly, but I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, I think, perfectly
and
well.
See me.
Yeah. And see you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Luc, for the introduction. First, dear ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors and colleagues who I cannot see yet now, I'm very sorry that I'm not here in person. But thanks to modern technology, I'm able to still give you this speech. And I'm doing this for the first time, so I want to excuse any technical problems or glitches which might happen. So I will start with my presentation now, and you should see it remotely.
Can you see it?
No, it doesn't work. Sorry, I have to go back. Okay, so here it is. So first I would like to thank ODIHR for the invitation to address you today during the session on human dimensional project work. I would like to talk about why monitoring, evaluation and learning is so crucial for OSCE's work. Using human dimension projects we have evaluated as examples. I would like to spend the next 10 minutes to provide you a short overview of evaluations in the OSCE, explain the independent evaluation function in OIO, and give examples of evaluations to explain why we evaluate and how that helps the OSCE to improve its projects and programs. And lastly, I want to present our key challenges and how we address them. So I would like to start with what is monitoring and evaluation? No. Sorry, this is really... I really don't know why that doesn't work. Yes, let's try it like that. So, what is evaluation? Evaluation is collecting and analyzing data in a systematic way to understand what a program or a project did, how it can improve, and what it achieved. Evaluation should provide information that is credible and useful, facilitating the incorporation of lessons learned into the organization's decision-making process. And of course, evaluation takes place in the real world and is often constrained by limited resources, usually time, budgets, and capacities, as well as political context. This is why evaluation should be practical, targeted, and feasible. Evaluation is based on guidelines and international standards and works with an agreed process, which is recorded in the evaluation plan, allowing transparency and replicating the methods used and the approach taken. That differentiates evaluation from experts' judgment or other less formal assessments. So what is monitoring? Monitoring in evaluation is not what we usually understand it in the OSCE, monitoring of ceasefires or the implementation of OSCE commitments, but it's the collection of information to assess a project, a program, or an activity. And evaluation uses monitoring data. So, the Office of Internal Oversight has three functions. It's audit, investigation, and evaluation. And I would like to talk today about evaluation. Our mandate positions us independent from line management, which differentiates us from self-evaluations and commissioned evaluations. I will explain that a little bit later. And it helps us to look across themes and structures in the OSCE. I think I have one of the most interesting jobs in the OSCE because I can see every little piece of the puzzle. And I have learned in the last 6 years that very often the sum is more than the pieces, but without looking at the different puzzle pieces, we don't understand what we do and we cannot learn. So what do we do in OIO? On the one hand, we conduct independent evaluations. We do support commissioned evaluations, which are initiated and paid by the executive structures, and we also support an evaluation network. I looked at the commissioned evaluations from the last 3 years and found that about 80% of these commissioned evaluations are actually done in the human dimension. I think that shows the great interest our colleagues have in showing the value we achieve in our projects. So now I would like to explain how we learn and why we evaluate. Evaluation can provide different kinds of learning. It can provide learning through assessment. It can provide learning used for decision making. It provides learning for improvement of projects, and it provides evidence. And at the heart of all this is learning in different ways. I want to give you one example. When we did a cross-site thematic project of our support to national human rights institutions, we looked at one case study. And we saw that over the 5 years this project was running, it had used different kind of indicators. But there was no overall summary of the progress. And in the evaluation process, we summarized, streamlined, and to the extent possible verified this information, and could thus verify the effect this project has. And we also found, and then helped to support a management decision to refocus and reduce a certain type of training that has showed not to have the desired effects. Now I would like to give you a few more examples on what we have learned when we evaluated projects in the human dimension or cross-dimensional projects. So when we evaluate themes across the OSCE, we looked a few years ago into the support we give to parliaments. What we learned there was that we have to do a very careful planning when we support large and complex IT components. Then we evaluated our support to human rights institutions across 2 regions and 6 case studies. And one very interesting learning from that was that actually the OSCE is in a very special position to provide this support because of our comprehensive approach. We are in the countries for a long time, we have very good contacts, and we work together in a partnership. And that positions the OSCE in a very good way in supporting our partners. We also evaluate programs and large projects. One example is a project we evaluated in Armenia, where we found that the mix of very tangible support to women resource centers and the actual political work yielded very interesting and very good results. Most recently, we also evaluated the Office of the Special Representative for Combating Trafficking in Human Beings and learned that the OSCE is filling with this work a very important niche because it works on the one hand on the political level and on the other hand with very technical and very useful capacity building and projects. We also do reviews across functions and structures of the OSCE. The recent thing we are just doing or currently doing is that we look at all conferences this organization is doing. And it's the first time this is ever done. So we will provide an overview of what we do and how we do it for the whole organization. And we also, as mentioned before, support the building and the strengthening of the evaluation culture in the OSCE. We have started in 2012 the so-called evaluation network, where we provide a platform for colleagues to talk about M&E and to share. Sorry, there's someone else talking.
No, there isn't. Sometimes we lose you
And,
slightly, but it should be fine.
and we also provide help desk support our colleagues when they commission an evaluation. So, but of course we also have challenges, but we also have a strategy to address them. Our key challenges we are facing. Evaluation and monitoring is still usually an afterthought instead of being planned for from the very beginning. We have limited budgets, timelines, and staff devoted to data collection, which would support evaluation and the improvement of projects and programs. And we still have a limited understanding on how to learn from evaluations. Often, evaluation is still not understood as a learning tool. And the use of evaluation to institutionalize key lessons that can inform new activities has not yet materialized. And also the use of evaluation to build an evidence base of what works for the OSCE still needs to be done. So, what is our way forward? First of all, we want to enrich our own evaluation OIO function. We are writing a new strategy and we will start upon new approaches and methodologies, keeping our learning focus, but advancing the level of rigor. We will also introduce new resources and supports for our colleagues. And we will also develop new strategies for sharing what we have learned, like learning briefs, white papers, and infographics. For the closing, I would like to say that evaluation is clearly not the one and only solution to improve our work. We need dedicated staff, we need strategic planning, sufficient resources, and political will to achieve our common goals. But evaluation can help to check if our own assumptions on how and if something works or not really true, and then helps us build evidence on what works and what doesn't. And this in turn helps decision makers to support the OSCE even more. Thank you very much, and I hope that it was understandable in this remote way.
Thank you, Sarani, for this interesting presentation, indeed being done in pretty difficult circumstances, but I think in the end it worked out pretty well, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think it's certainly a topic that we'll also continue discussing in other forum, and it's also very timely. As you know, 2015 is the International Year of Evaluation, and we'll also soon have a meeting of the OSCE Evaluation Network in Belgrade in November. So I think this is gonna be providing food for thought for some time to come. So thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to representatives of a number of OSCE executive structures. We are very pleased to have 3 presentations lined up, I think with a very good variation in themes and scope. So this should be able to give us a good flavor of the work undertaken in our organization. I would like to pass the floor first to colleagues of the High Commissioner on National Minorities, Mr. William Romans and Ms. Nino Gogoladze. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. I want to give you a brief flavor of what we do in the field in terms of project work. But before that, just to tell you, I'll first set out very briefly the structure of what we do in terms of the mandate and the cooperation that we enjoy. The mandate of the High Commissioner, of course, is to provide early warning and, as appropriate, early action in regards to tensions involving national minorities, which in her judgment have the potential to develop into conflicts. Now, I want to say here that she works in confidence and consults with participating states and minorities alike, offering advice to participating states on how to address both the immediate and root causes of tensions. But nothing that myself or my colleague are going to say today in any way impacts upon that confidentiality mandate. What we're going to do instead is look a little bit at the project work of the HCNM, which is not the main activity, but it's one of the most visible activities to the public. So the first issue I want to talk about is cooperation. And here I want to make it clear that whilst the High Commissioner works behind the scenes, she could not as effectively do that work if it was carried out in isolation. She relies upon the support from both other OSCE institutions, structures, field missions, as well as directly from participating states. And her advisors in that respect maintain a constant dialogue with other regional and international organizations, such as relevant agencies of the UN, the Council of Europe, and the European Union, just to name a few. Further on the subject of cooperation, here we have the DHOM from the OSCE mission in Serbia, and I want to say that's one example of cooperation which we have on a regular basis. We share notes where possible and within our mandates where that's allowed. One project which we have worked on together, for example, is in Serbia, in the south of Serbia, in the Preševo Valley area, where there are mainly local ethnic Albanian speaking municipalities, and there was a desire there to have more higher education access within those municipalities in the Albanian tongue. Now, working together very closely with the government of Serbia in particular, the University of Novi Sad, the mission, the EU, UNOPS, as well as other bilateral actors, we've been involved together in promoting access to higher education in those national minority communities, partly in the mother tongue. The linguistic and educational rights of persons belonging to national minorities are of course well established and are elaborated in many of the recommendations published by the High Commissioner, including the Oslo and Lund recommendations. However, governments often need support because it's a fine line to tread between the legitimate and needed promotion of official language as well as upholding the rights of national minorities in these areas. And here I want to talk further about cooperation, and yes, there is a Swiss flag there, but that's not just because it's a beautiful flag, it's because in this area we have some close cooperation with one of the participating states, Switzerland, who has very generously provided extra budgetary funding for some of our project work in Kosovo. I want to give you a little bit of background on that project. The two official languages in Kosovo are Albanian and Serbian. They have equal status and equal rights with regard to their use in Kosovo institutions. The law on the use of languages in Kosovo provides that official languages are used on an equal basis by and within municipal administrations. The reality is different. The paper is good, the law is there, but the implementation is much more difficult. This is one area in which we have provided support, and we are trying to ensure that every person in Kosovo can communicate with municipal authorities in a language which they can understand, and that available services and public documents are available in both official languages. The lack of knowledge of those languages, however, in the municipal administration, along with underrepresentation, creates a number of problems, especially in the mixed municipalities. It inhibits requests for and provision of public services, as well as making the integration of Kosovo society harder. The language training project, which initiated by the High Commissioner's Office for the 4th year in a row, aims to increase and sustain the proficiency of municipal languages. Can we? Yeah. Well, we've passed that. Okay, here's some photos of the classes. And here you have Albanian, speaking officials learning Serbian, and you have Serbian speaking officials learning Albanian. I'm going to skip some of the actual details and just give you an overview. The participants go through a 6-month training with about 48 or 49 classes in the language that they don't speak, and are tested on their current level of progress at the end of the classes. And during the 6-month period in which those courses run, there are 3 times testing, as well as a final testing and a certificate at the end. In 2014, there were 281 participants in the courses, with 220 participants attending more than 50% of the classes. The enthusiasm is greater than those pictures would actually indicate. Our project manager on this one was hired for other skills, not photography. In fact, there has been more requests, both in the Serbian-speaking, mainly Serbian-speaking municipalities and the mainly Albanian-speaking municipalities for more of these classes, and this is seen as, I think, a very successful example of cooperation between our office and one participating state. I'm going to wrap up the part on Kosovo there, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague who is going to talk about project work in Georgia.
Thank you, William. My name is Nino Gogoladze. I'm a National Program Manager at the Office of OSCE High Commissioner National Minorities in Tbilisi, Georgia. I will present our work, our project work, to provide access to the language education to national minority groups in the country. Just a few words about Georgia. It's a small country with a 3.7 million population, but with a multitude of minority groups, with Armenian and Azerbaijani national minority groups being the 2 largest. They live compactly in the southern parts of the country, and in general, both minority groups suffer from isolation. But in particular, their political participation is limited, and they have limited, or in some cases, no knowledge of the state language. In that sense, HCNM's engagement is mostly focused on acquisition of the official language in civil service, at schools, teacher training, teaching material development, and last but not least, multilingual education policy development. Here. Considering that the language constitutes an essential component of identity, our project work has been keen to ensure that the Georgian state creates opportunities for minorities to use their mother tongue, but at the same time learn the state language. And the project that were implemented in Georgia since 2002 were generously supported by the number of participating states through extra budgetary funding. What will follow now is just the photos of some of the project activities, but I want to say that most of the projects were multi-year, had multiple beneficiaries, which are the central government, local government bodies, schools, teachers, and just interested individuals. These projects were oriented towards introducing new policy decisions and ensuring sustainable outcomes at policy level. Well, needless to say that since 2002 we've had lots of project activities, but I'm not going to talk about each and every of them. However, they focus mostly on 3 key areas. The first is the preparation of teaching materials, which includes teaching methodology, reading materials, textbooks, posters. First Georgian language level textbook was developed through one of those project activities, which was adapted to the needs and language skills of minority groups. And here on the photo you see one of those trainings for the teachers to use these materials. Then second is the provision of language skills and also the capacity for teachers, civil servants, high school pupils, and students. So these were multi-year separate projects. And for the moment, we can say that all Georgian language teachers in minority schools in Azerbaijani and Armenian minority settled areas, and this is more than 400, are trained in Georgian language skills and also in teaching methodology. And it should be noted that teachers went through a comprehensive training module consisting of 3 levels. This is also the reading material for the elementary school to allow kids to start reading and understanding Georgian for the ages like 5, 6, and 7. One project that I would really like to emphasize is the establishment of so-called language houses, which provided venue and opportunity for teaching Georgian language to interested individuals. And the language houses in Akhalkalaki and Ninotsminda towns, which are the towns mostly settled by ethnic Armenian minority group, they were equipped with library, internet, and other visual support materials to make it an attractive place for learning Georgian. And the language houses were transferred to the government of Georgia, which replicated the success of those institutions, and now in total there are 8 language houses operated in different areas with compact settlement of minorities, and the photo on the screen is one of those, and this is a fancy one made by the government. We could not afford that fancy building, construction of such a fancy building. And the third area is work on the policy work with the Ministry of Education and Science of Georgia to introduce multilingual education policy and create basis of its implementation. This is an ongoing process. We keep communication with the ministry on a regular basis. And last but not least, in order to make bilingual teaching sustainable and overcome the gap in shortage of bilingual teachers, HCNM supported the development of bachelor's program in bilingual teaching. And this program is currently implemented in higher education institutions in Georgia. This is very briefly about the project work that we do in the country, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nino, and thank you, William. And I note from your presentations definitely the cooperation and synergies, especially in the case of the examples provided by William with other OSCE structures, and overall the engagement of OSCE in trying to bridge the gap that often exists between already existing legislations and provisions and their implementation. Then I would now like to pass the floor to Mr. Michael ODIHR, Deputy Head of Mission of the mission to Serbia, to give us an overview of recent project work undertaken in their mission. Mr. ODIHR, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you today. And this is my first time at a Human Dimension implementation meeting, and although I've worked a number of years to prepare my delegation in terms of developing statements and handling the logistical arrangements, and I'm finally glad to have been able to make it to Warsaw to present this to you today. I'm glad for the opportunity to provide you with some examples of how the OSCE mission supports Serbia's implementation of its Human Dimension commitments. The OSCE mission programs center on the implementation of Human Dimension commitments in the 4 specified areas of its mandate. It provides advice and expertise on the areas of rule of law and human rights, 2nd, of democratization, 3rd, police affairs, and 4th, media. In the area of rule of law, I would like to touch upon 2 main points. From its establishment, the mission has supported Serbia in its criminal justice reform to increase Serbia's effectiveness and the human rights compliance of its response to crime. For example, the mission established an annual forum for the exchange of opinions at a Belgrade regional conference on criminal procedure that, inter alia, took up the transition to an adversarial criminal procedure system with prosecutor-led investigations, a reform adopted by a majority of Western Balkans countries. The discussion forum serves to launch our annual regional publication on criminal procedure, compiling regional experience from academics and practitioners. Serbian practitioners and their colleagues from the region have welcomed and praised the establishment of this forum for dialogue, which complements well the work of ODIHR and our sister field operations. Another highlight is our work on torture prevention. The mission was instrumental in supporting the establishment of the Serbian National Preventive Mechanism, the national body that fulfills a requirement of the optional protocol to the UN Convention Against Torture. We now work in partnership with this institution and help Serbian authorities follow up on its recommendations. Through our in-house expertise, we contributed to developing a legal framework to protect the rights of people deprived of liberty in prisons and mental health institutions. We also continue our efforts to consolidate the normative framework for the protection of persons held in police custody and in social welfare institutions. In the field of democratization, I will highlight three main examples of successful interventions, programs, and projects. First, in 2011, the OSCE mission to Serbia and the OSCE mission in Kosovo implemented the idea of bringing together prominent women from Belgrade and Pristina with the aim of establishing a forum for dialogue between two groups who were formerly in conflict. This has resulted in a series of informal meetings between women parliamentarians, academics, civil society, and media representatives, which was originally dubbed the Budva process, but is now referred to as Follow Us. The fact that these meetings could be held represented a success. However, the process has also moved forward with the production of a documentary on the initiative. The short film has been screened in Belgrade, Pristina, Novi Pazar in southwestern Serbia, and at a side event of the Vienna Western Balkans Summit last August. Regular follow-us meetings are now held in either Serbia or Kosovo and no longer on neutral ground. Finally, and most importantly, the dynamic of this process has allowed participants to build mutual confidence, which in turn has resulted in their consultation with each other on a variety of issues, including outside the settings of regular follow-us meetings. Participants have agreed to develop an action plan for 2016 that will include joint working groups to deal with select pieces of legislation of common interest. This process shows that the OSCE, through its field operations, is well placed to facilitate a forum for dialogue and for confidence building based on wide and influential networks that have been built up over the years. The follow-us process holds the potential to serve as a model for similar initiatives across the OSCE area. Another interesting example of cooperation occurred between my field operation and ODIHR. In early 2013, the mission assisted a group of Serbian women MPs to cooperate informally in the Serbian Women's Parliamentary Network to advance the position of women in Serbian society. ODIHR has been an important partner in this undertaking through the provision of financial and expert assistance. Activities included the organization of a regional networking conference of women MPs from the Western Balkans and provision of expertise on the establishment of such a network. Youth featured highly on the agenda of the Swiss and Serbian chairmanships. Cooperation among youth from different countries can play a significant role in promoting tolerance, reconciliation, and dialogue in Southeastern Europe. Accordingly, the mission has stepped up its programming towards empowering youth and strengthening the capacities of institutions tasked with the implementation of youth policies in Serbia. In this vein, last June, the mission and ODIHR co-organized a seminar on youth political participation in the region with the support of the OSCE chairmanship in office. OSCE field operation representatives from Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, and Kosovo, CSO representatives, and OSCE model youth ambassadors discussed methods for enhancing youthful political participation, regional good practices, challenges, and experiences in promoting youth political participation, and youth and new media. The seminar was streamed live and gathered significant engagement via social media. After the seminar, OSCE field operations and ODIHR representatives held an internal meeting to discuss the outcomes of the event and identify follow-up actions. In the domain of police affairs, I would like to draw your attention to two activities. The mission, together with the Secretariat's Gender section, organized a workshop aimed at assisting the Serbian government in planning and impact assessment of Serbia's National Action Plan for United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. The planning workshop gathered 40 representatives of key bodies created under the National Action Plan, such as the Political Council, Multi-Sector Coordination Body, and Supervisory Body in the Serbian Parliament, as well as prominent civil society organizations. Moreover, the Institute for Inclusive Security from Washington, D.C. shared its expertise in developing and implementing effective national action plans. The second activity I would like to showcase targets domestic violence and violence against women in family and intimate partnership relations. In order to foster exchange of information on practice and procedures on matters of domestic violence between the Serbian and Albanian police, the mission to Serbia and the OSCE presence in Albania organized a visit of representatives of the Albanian State Police to Belgrade. The main focus of this exchange was Serbia's special protocol for police actions in case of violence against women and family and intimate partnership relations, as well as the establishment of the network of police victim coordinators from uniformed and criminal investigation police. The very good cooperation between the two field operations resulted in a planned follow-up visit of the Serbian police to the Albanian State Police, slated for October of this year. Last but not least, turning to media affairs, I would like to share with you the following two observations. The Office of the OSCE Representative on Freedom of Media and OSCE Field Operations are well placed to facilitate knowledge sharing and enhancing the understanding of the digital and programmatic changes in the media sector. They also play an important role in fostering strong networks of media professionals, journalists, media lawyers, and activists to safeguard freedom of expression in both the off and online spheres. An example of this is the joint engagement of the OSCE mission to Serbia and the representative on freedom of media in organizing a conference titled Gaining a Digital Edge, Freedom of Expression. The third iteration of this event will take place in Serbia this year and will gather around 150 participants from 14 Central and Southeast European countries with a view to exchanging the latest research and sharing best practices. The cooperation between OSCE field operations and independent regulatory bodies plays an important role in strengthening their independence and visibility, as well as the transparency and understanding of their work and mandates. These institutions, such as ombudsmen and commissioners for the protection of equality and for protection of public information, are the very instruments whereby a country is internally held accountable to its human dimension commitments. In light of this, OSCE field operations can provide public support to these independent institutions through joint public events, as has been the case in Serbia over several years on the occasion of the ceremony marking the International Right to Know Day, organized by the Commissioner for Protection of Public Information. In sum, the mission benefits in the implementation of its mandate from a solid working level partnership with Serbian counterparts, government, independent institutions, and civil society. The mission, as a partner in reforms and a champion of shared values, remains an essential resource for the delivery of assistance and expertise to Serbia. We also seek to leverage synergies and strengthen coordination with international partners, such as the EU delegation, Council of Europe office in Belgrade, UN agencies, and bilateral embassies. Finally, in order to best employ expertise and ensure efficiency, the mission continues to work with the Secretariat, ODIHR, and other OSCE independent institutions, and to engage in horizontal cooperation with OSCE field operations in the region. Serbia has made a tremendous transformation over the last decade and longer to emerge as a positive force for regional reconciliation in the Balkans. The OSCE generally and the OSCE mission in Serbia in particular have been present and we'd like to think have significantly contributed to this transformation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. ODIHR, for this very comprehensive overview, demonstrating great linkages, like I say, not only horizontal with local counterparts, but also with international organizations, and also with all the other OSCE institutions and structures. So thank you very much. The next speaker is Ambassador Verba, the project coordinator in Ukraine, who will now also highlight a number of activities undertaken currently in Ukraine. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, indeed it's my first occasion to speak before you here in this human dimension meeting here, but nevertheless I'll try to be quick, efficient, and not long-worded and not abuse too much of your time. The OSCE was established as a security organization which implements a broad concept of security beyond traditional military security, disarmament, and border issues. The OSCE concept of security deals equally with human rights and democratic issues. OSCE participating states have committed themselves to the comprehensive catalog of human rights and democracy norms as an indispensable component of lasting security, both nationally and internationally. The request for human rights and functioning democratic institutions form the basis of the human dimension of security. The human dimension has become one of the three pillars of the comprehensive security concept, along with the political, military, and economic and environmental dimensions. The yearly Human Dimension Implementation Meeting, organized by the Office of the Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, has become the year's probably largest human rights conference and implements in practice the human dimension of security. The presence of HGIM, of many non-governmental organizations which participate in the conference on equal footing with the government representatives is an important element in building the human dimension of security. The Warsaw Conference has become a leading forum for non-governmental organizations could express their views loudly where their voices are heard and well received. I'm pleased to know and acknowledge the many participants and representatives from Ukraine where the civil society and non-governmental organizations are playing an important and growing role in developing the human dimension of security. OSCE actively supports these roles. OSCE provides more and role continuously expanding bulwark, offering Ukraine partners from government and civil society with a range of programs to enhance democracy, develop society, and promote social and economical development. According to its mandate and approved program and the budget, the activities of the Project Coordinator's Office cover all three dimensions of the OSCE. The Project Coordinator's Office plans, implements, and monitors projects initiated at the request of the Ukrainian institutions and civil society. Activities focus on projects that assist Ukrainian authorities in promoting the development of democratic institutions and civil society, encourage the rule of law, promote human rights, address security issues, encourage economic development, deal with environmental threats, and promote sustainable development. The OSCE assists to gradually ease tensions and rebuild security in Ukraine and enhance international cooperation. The OSCE has shown already several strengths. The consensus mandate and support from all the parties in capitals and in the field. Operational capability to set up a function in difficult circumstances. Ability to fulfill its mandate in these different areas without being exposed to high political pressure. The Project Coordinator's Office has continued cooperation with the Ukrainian government and civil society and coordinating important projects in all these areas. The PCU has already been more engaged in the growing interaction with the OSCE participating states, the other OSCE family institutions, and in other international partners. The PCU focuses its work on the areas which other relevant domestic international actors do not provide assistance and where it has accumulated special expertise and know-how. There are growing demands from the Ukrainian partners, both from the government and civil society, for the OSCE support and participation in Ukraine. The OSCE assists to meet the immediate challenges for Ukraine, including security and stability, inter-society dialogue, constitutional reform, increasing powers of the local government and decentralization, and in the economic development. Probably, the human dimension of security is a leading component of OSCE presence in Ukraine. Interest and demand for the OSCE projects with the PCU has been increased and remains high in Ukraine. We recognize the realities of the fiscal pressures faced by the OSCE as a whole. The PCU is implementing an increased level of program activities with a slightly increased budget this year. The PCU, upon the request from civil society, launched and promoted a series of dialogues between the central authorities, regional and local authorities within the major thematic areas as a leading form of cooperation and interaction. They implement and practice the human dimension of security. Major dialogue events were conducted in Kramatorsk in May with the roughly 150 participants with topics covering economy, humanitarian situation, civil society, community security, and media. In Parliament in July, in cooperation with the EU advisory mission, which offered a broad discussion of reform agenda, bringing in leaders from the regions. In Krasnoarmeysk, again in July, where almost 200 participants discussed economy, humanitarian issues, decentralization, and elections. And lastly, I just last week returned from Severodonetsk, where we moved our forum for reconstruction and development into the areas very close to the contact line, and the similar issues were discussed. The dialogue was present in all 3 nationwide consultations on the Women, Peace and Security National Action Plan. Nationwide consultations with electoral officials to prepare for local elections, which are due very, very soon. Dialogue facilitated discussions to better coordinate, for example, mine action, humanitarian aspects of mine action, I should say. There are several other dialogues which are planned later this year, probably together with the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights and High Commissioner of National Minorities. So we're planning to conduct national dialogue on centralization with focusing on national minorities in Odessa region. We also are planning a tele-based discussion via website with the representatives and with the civil society of the areas which are not easily accessible technically. The dialogue has become a leading form of engagement, cooperation and assistance in the implementation of OSCE principles and commitments in Ukraine, and further strengthening of stability, rule of law, democracy, security and economic development of Ukraine. The dialogues provide for a growing participation of the civil society and regional and local stakeholders. The dialogue format facilitates the practical interaction and cooperation between the international expertise. This is a growing interest in our international partners to join dialogues as a practical form of reaching Ukrainians' audience and to create a direct cooperation. The dialogues assisted in better accommodation of reforms to the local needs. Areas of constitutional reform, increasing powers of the local government, and decentralization received a high attention during the conducted dialogue meetings. In conclusion, there are growing expectations and demands from the Ukrainian partners, from the governments and civil society, for further expansion of dialogue in the areas of security and stability, in society dialogue, constitutional reform, increasing powers of the local government, decentralization. To put it bluntly, so the first question we asked by the different stakeholders in different parts of Ukraine, so when and whether you're coming back. This is a clear signal for all of us. The civil society and non-governmental partners are becoming growing beneficiaries and provided assistance and of the provided assistance and cooperation. The Project Coordinator's Office is well positioned to assist in further strengthening of the stability, rule of law, democracy, security, and economic development of Ukraine. Plans for the second half of the year, I should say, represent a logical progression based on successful implementation of OSCE programs through the PCU projects. And here I'd like to stop and for illustration to show several slides that for you to better memorize what I've just been saying and a few things important. National Dialogue for Justice and Development. Again, all the events which were organized in the eastern part of the country. So this national dialogue on the constitutional reform, which we did together with the EU advisory mission and with the leadership of the country. election preparation. For the elections, so we've been traditionally in supporting a central election commission and regional and local election commissions. So, but this year in particular, we engaged already in preparation process. We engaged local election commissions, and we worked out a very good guideline and online system which helps them to better prepare for elections. Here I should mention also exemplary cooperation between us and ODIHR election observation missions and their officials. Rule of law and human rights, standard thing. There are, probably it should be said that not many people know that OSCE probably is the only international organization besides bilateral support of United States, Canada and Japan was engaged in the training and preparation of new police force and the future precinct police officers, so all over the country. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and thank you once again for giving me the floor, and I'm more than available for your requests and queries from now on emails and telephones and personally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for an obviously highly actual overview of ongoing activities in the PCU. Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Mr. Alexander Jubligin, Deputy Head of Mission of the Mission to Bosnia and Herzegovina, for a couple of remarks about project work in the mission there. Mr. Jubligin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I also want to thank my colleagues for their profound and very interesting presentations. I, for my, will limit myself just to several remarks / observations based on OSCE missions experience. Successful examples of missions engagement. The mission provided state and entity authorities assistance in harmonizing the civil procedure codes in accordance with human dimension commitments of Vienna 1989 and Copenhagen 1990. The mission worked with state and entity judges, lawyers, and representatives of 3 ministries of justice of the country, which are State, Federation, and Republika Srpska ministries, to jointly identify the problematic issues of each of 3 procedure codes. Mission assisted the consolidation of the network of 120 coalitions against hate established with the support of OSCE in accordance with human dimension commitments, Moscow 1991, Istanbul 1999, and Maastricht 2003. It should be noted that these coalitions will be now a crucial factor in the new mission's extra budgetary project on countering violent extremism, aimed at working with the youth at the community level, mainly in the field of prevention. Mission uses the conflict cycle analysis as a planning and organizing tool, which continues to be a very valid instrument to work with the key drivers and restrainers of conflict, as well as to increase the early warning role of the mission. Fields of concentration in which the mission is best placed to facilitate change by creating a forum for dialogue are human rights, rule of law, governance, gender, which are the key programmatic areas of the mission. How can the interplay between OSCE institutions and field operations mandates and programming be used most effectively? First of all, by having fluent contacts at the working level, which opens up opportunities for cooperation and avoidance of overlaps. Also, close cooperation is needed between missions and the Office of the High Commissioner on National Minorities, and equally with ODIHR, with which our mission's engagement was especially good in gender, hate crimes, and judiciary-related matters, and also recent general elections in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chupligin, and my sincere thanks to all presenters for their contributions today. Now I would like to move on to the other speakers on the list. We have only 3 speakers, but looking at the time, I think we'll also have to limit the interventions to about 3 minutes and a half, as we also need to reserve some time for a possible right to reply. I would also like to announce that during the interventions we will put up a compilation of pictures kindly provided by all the field operations with some pictures of their project work done in the last year. So the Twitter screens are temporarily disappearing and being replaced by what I would call a moving picture wall. I hope you will enjoy it for the remaining time of this session. So then I would move on to the speakers lists. We have as a first speaker Ireland, delegation of Ireland on behalf of the European Union, followed by the Caucasus Research Resources Center, Armenia. Representative of the delegation of Ireland, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm speaking on behalf of the European Union and also on behalf of the following participating states: Turkey, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Liechtenstein, Norway, Moldova, Georgia, Andorra and San Marino. I'd like to begin my statement by making the following recommendations. Participating states should take advantage of the services offered by OSCE executive structures in enhancing the implementation of commitments. Participating states should take account of and follow up on recommendations made by the executive structures. Participating states should ensure timely adoption of the OSCE unified budget and provide more predictable extra budgetary contributions. Executive structures should continue to coordinate closely with each other and with other relevant international actors. When designing projects and activities, executive structures should foster close collaboration with civil society. Executive structures should continue to improve the evaluation of their projects, including by using key performance indicators. I would say at this point that a written version of this statement will be available, and I will have to abbreviate my actual remarks to take account of the time limit. The EU attaches the highest importance to the work of the OSCE in the human dimension. There is an unquestionable link between respect for our OSCE human dimension commitments and the attainment and maintenance of a comprehensive, cooperative, and indivisible security community. To assist us in meeting our OSCE commitments, including in the human dimension, the participating states created the autonomous institutions of ODIHR, the representative for the freedom of the media, and the High Commissioner for National Minorities, and established operations in the field. The EU strongly supports the mandates of these executive structures and their efforts to provide assistance, support, and training to participating states. Project work is an important way for OSCE executive structures to engage with participating states and to assist them to implement our commonly agreed commitments. And we've heard some outstanding examples of this from the panelists this morning. In particular, we would like to highlight the valuable work of the OSCE executive structures in response to the crisis in and around Ukraine. It is important that the executive structures cooperate closely with each other, with other relevant international organizations and with civil society to avoid duplication and maximize the impact of projects. They should also seek to increase project evaluation, to ensure projects are transparent and lessons can be learned for future projects. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much for these very concrete recommendations and for taking into consideration our time limit. Thank you very much. So next speaker is from the Caucasus Research Resources Center in Armenia, followed by the Russian Federation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Also, I'm first time here, and I'm happy to see how the atmosphere is free for expression of any thought, discussion of any sensitive, not enough sensitive, already established and new innovative ideas. I'm happy really, and I would like to share with you some thought regarding the CSO and think tank sector developments in Caucasian countries. I do work for the Caucasus Research Resource Centers in Armenia since 2002. It is already 13 years, and we went very intensive cooperation way with our colleagues in Georgia and Azerbaijan, while conducting especially a public opinion survey, which is called Caucasus Barometer. And I'm concerned very much because of, in 2014, we were not able to conduct the next survey. We'll be conducting in 2015 in September, October, already in October, we'll be conducting the field works with Georgia only. CRRC Azerbaijan simply dropped because of the developments within the societies, within the Azerbaijani society. When I do compare the pathway of countries and behavior or status of CSOs, for Caucasus countries, I can state that in Georgia, the CSO sector and the think tank sector is the most successful. In Armenia, it is moderately successful. And finally, in Azerbaijan, it is likely that is going down, unfortunately. The Caucasus Barometer was about many things, and it really matches with one dimension, human dimension, which is about well-being, values, attitudes, behavior, beliefs, expectations, participation, policies, impact of policies, etc., etc. At the very end, it is about social cohesion within the countries and outside of countries. So the voice, I mean the public opinion, should be heard by governments of countries, and the governments, while going out having negotiations and representing countries at high diplomatic levels, they have to really take into account which are the expectations of societies. And our surveys from year to year show that people would like peace, they would like more works, they would like earnings. So even if there are some disputes, these disputes should be negotiated in peaceful way and through the discussions. So what I'm talking about, I am really calling the international organizations, particularly OSCE, which also is very active in Armenia, and recently the CRRC Armenia conducted a survey on labor, forced labor and human trafficking, and we learned a lot of things after the project is over, we'll be delivering, and we do hope that the recommendations will be thoroughly picked up by international organizations, by governments, etc. But still, we would like, while evaluating the projects, while cooperating with the government, while designing OSCE projects, please, 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 just have in your minds that societies have to say their thoughts. They have to share, they have to be heard, they have to participate. The policies that are not laid on land, they don't have chance. The countries that don't communicate with civil society, with ordinary people, they will progress very slowly. So I do hope that the things will be changing towards the positive ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this. And final speaker on the list is the delegation of the Russian Federation. Floor is yours, please.
Thank you, moderator. Reviewing the work of the executive structures is a crucial part of the entire OSCE's work. We thank the representatives of executive bodies for their report on project work. This contributes to the transparency of our organization's work. The primary task of the executive bodies is to foster cooperation among participant states in establishing a single area of indivisible security in the OSCE region, as well as wiping out any fault lines and aligning the positions of states. Unfortunately, I have to say that ODIHR and the High Commission on Minority Rights, and often the OSCE representative on freedom of the media, are not proving up to the task. The leaders of these institutions act and speak in ways that suggest a discernible bias and clear attempts to fulfill some political orders. The OSCE institutes should strictly abide by the mandate that was adopted by the top bodies of our organization. Only thus can the appropriate and effective use of resources be ensured and trust from all states secured. Often, the executive structures, though, reinterpret their mandate rather broadly. In practice, there are some programs that are being prepared without any relevant decision from the member states. The executive bodies should show impartial and balanced views in their work, both geographically and thematically. Their zone of competence is the entire OSCE region. There is a clear lack of attention when it comes to important fields such as the protection of minority rights, statelessness, combating aggressive nationalism, extremism, neo-Nazism, protecting the rights of the child and privacy, the freedom of movement, including the easing of visa requirements. Institution leaders tend to ignore human rights violations in Baltic states, where 40% of the population are deprived of their rights and freedoms as they belong to national minorities. ODIHR and the High Commissioner turn a blind eye to the undue and disproportionate use of force by American police against Afro-Americans in the United States. And the migration crisis and its human rights dimension is passed over in silence in the EU. We cannot agree with the approach adopted by the OSCE representative for the freedom of the media, who unequally uses various means of response available when dealing with similar violations of freedom of expression and media rights, depending on the state concerned. We believe that the work of such an important institution should be clear and transparent to all states. There is a lopsidedness coming from certain politically biased events, and this does not lead to an atmosphere propitious to open dialogue. Yet it has to be said that ODIHR and the High Commissioner have a lot to learn from the representative for the media. Amongst other things, they could draw inspiration from the broad scope of themes covered, the efforts to achieve geographic balance, and to respond swiftly to events. However, we would like to commend the work of the OSCE Secretariat's Human Dimension subdivisions, including the section on gender, the Office of the Special Representative and Coordinator for Combating Human Trafficking. Overall, the work of executive bodies should serve to iron out, not widen, differences between states, especially on issues that are not the subject of consensus among all participant states. It is unacceptable for OSCE executive bodies to independently make assertions in the field of international law when these run counter to the position of participant states. A compelling example of the biased approach is the fact that the Polish authorities denied entry to a number of Russian participants to this meeting, including the deputy head of the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Crimea, Mr. Muradov, and representatives from civil society. This is a gross violation of OSCE principles and goals, a case of open discrimination and political censorship. ODIHR bears direct responsibility for this by failing to guarantee the presence of all participants to this meeting, which limited the range of views heard. There is no single method for election observation. This can also erode trust between states. The take-it-or-leave-it approach of ODIHR towards organizing election observation missions is unacceptable. The latest scandal was in Azerbaijan, when ODIHR refused to even discuss observation modalities with the national authorities and consequently cancelled the monitoring of the elections there. This reveals the gaping mismatch between ODIHR working methods.
Recommendations, please.
Maybe just 20 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Another striking example of this lack of professionalism is the recent so-called report on Crimea. It was prepared in breach of the structure's mandate and without a decision from the participant states. The terms occupation and annexation are used. This is unacceptable, as the executive bodies themselves cannot directly interpret things like this. They should foster cooperation between member states and not fuel confrontation. To conclude, I would like to say that these attitudes adversely impact the OSCE's authority overall. It erodes trust. There is a clear need for a thorough review of the mandates and concepts underpinning these structures. The Russian Federation, as always, stands ready to engage in open and constructive debate on how to enhance the efficiency of the human dimension of the OSCE. Thank you.
We have no more speakers on the list. Therefore, I would ask if anybody would like to exercise the right to reply. And we actually have two. First is Azerbaijan, followed by Ukraine. Yes. I think, okay. So please, the representative of the delegation of Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As usual business, I would like to exercise my right of reply regarding the statement by respective Armenian civil society representative. As usual, during the ODIHR, having instructed by Armenian delegation, Armenian NGO representative tries to use every opportunity to blame Azerbaijan in order to somehow take the eye from the occupation of Azerbaijani lands. First of all, I will answer. First of all, I want to mention that currently there are about 3,000 NGOs functioning in Azerbaijan. And just for the information of the respective NGO member, it is Armenian civil society leader, namely Van Mertrasyan, who actually was also leader of Armenian Freedom, Armenian Freedom Development, ran to Azerbaijan and asked for asylum. Maybe it's forbidden in Armenian media to speak about it, but the representative of the research center should be, I think, should be aware of it. And what he talked about civil society situation in Armenia, it just contradicts what we heard here and what was told by the Armenian delegation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. In addition to Ukraine, we also have a request from Poland to exercise the right to reply. So I would kindly ask speakers to really stick to the maximum amount of 2 minutes in order to allow for a technical break before the closing session. Thank you very much. Delegation of Ukraine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In response to the statement of the Russian delegation, I would like to draw the attention of this delegation that the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol were and remain an integral part of Ukraine, although temporarily occupied by the Russian Federation by military force. Their unchanged status as territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders was reaffirmed by the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 68/262 Territorial Integrity of Ukraine of 27th March 2014, which is now part of international law together with other international instruments that safeguard the territorial integrity of Ukraine. I would also like to thank the ODIHR and HCNM for preparing a report on the human rights situation in the occupied Crimea. The report was prepared as a result of the work of the Human Rights Assessment Mission, which was invited by the Ukrainian authorities to Ukraine to undertake this work. We see the instrument of the conduct of Human Rights Assessment Mission as useful in terms of identifying the challenges to implementation of human rights commitments and finding the ways to address them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of additional rights to reply, so I will have to reiterate my request to be really very brief. Next will be the delegation of Poland, followed by the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The statement of Poland regarding Mr. Muradov case has been already delivered and its written version is published. As regards the consular proceedings in individual cases, I suppose that in Polish consular offices, hundreds of visa proceedings concerning Russian citizens are pending currently, and if Russian Federation has any objection on one of these cases, it could be clarified on the traditional diplomatic way. And of course, if our colleagues from the Russian delegation had some less formal questions, I had been here for 2 weeks every day, and I'm glad that I could help with clarifying one of their concern last week. And this problem was solved in few hours, and it occurred not to be political, of course, and there was no reason to find it outrageous. And as far as I noticed, all delegates and civil society representatives from the Russian Federation have taken the floor and have spoken freely on the same rules as other participants. Thank you.
Thank you. Next right of reply coming from the delegation of the Russian Federation, followed by Armenia. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like briefly to respond to the statement of the Ukrainian and Polish delegations. Now, if anyone has any doubts with respect to Crimea, then I'd like to ask you to become familiar with the referendum that took place there, in which the people of Crimea expressed their free will about their future fate. And with respect to the consultative document, I'd also like to say that if you believe, and I'm referring to the report in that case, if you consider that since the headquarters of ODIHR is in Warsaw, and that is why we are holding a meeting here, then in that case, then it is the responsibility of the Polish authorities to provide entry to all of those who have been invited to speak at this meeting. We are an international organization, and there should be a pluralism of views established or provided here. This is why we have expressed our views. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final right to reply coming from the delegation of Armenia.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would like to exercise my right of reply to the delegation of Azerbaijan. I am not aware of what prompted distinguished Azerbaijani colleague to make such an aggressive response in reply to an Armenian NGO whom I saw here for the first time in my life. I'd like to mention that maybe for some countries giving instructions to civil society is considered to be a best practice, but we would like to respectfully deny such a best practice. It's not a style of work for my government, for my authorities. And I would like to mention that I do not agree with the criticism which I heard in the statement of the Armenian NGO, that the Armenian civil society is only moderately free in its activities in comparison with other countries of the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everybody for the interventions and presentations today. Then we have reached the end of our session, so I would like to declare then the technical break. Given that we've gone a bit over time, we would like to reconvene at 11:35. So thank you very much, and see you in 10 minutes.